I'm Megan McGee, and I am the executive director and one of the co-founders of Fabula, a Milwaukee nonprofit that strengthens community bonds through the art of storytelling. When you talk about strengthening community bonds, that includes addressing some of the barriers that keep us apart, like institutional racism and subconscious bias. However, I personally, quick story, wasn't always aware of those things. I grew up in Oshkosh, where my understanding of racism was basically, I like LeVar Burton, so I can't be racist. And I truly thought that, if people wanted an education, you just had to work hard and you could go get one, because that kind of reflected my experience. However, over time, I've had a lot of opportunities to listen to stories from people of color and from other white people involved in equity work, and I've learned about the complexities. And I've even noticed my own bias. And since stories were a big part of my learning, that led to me talking to a lot of other community members and coming up with this concept of using personal stories to engage other people in important thought, conversation, and then action. In order to combat racism. So the fellowship started in 2015. We brought on a class of 25 adults who were interested in telling stories about race and equity issues. And we had them work with ex-Fabula storytelling coaches to identify, craft, and share personal stories. They got to go to 6 workshops, some story circles, some one-on-one coaching, lots of support, and working in a team to craft these great stories that they then shared at interactive outreach performances all over the greater Milwaukee region. So each event has community partners that help market the event, 3 personal stories that introduce the topic and also kind of model vulnerability. And then there's also opportunities for audience members to share their own stories in small group dialogues. One of our most recent fellowship events was entitled Talking to Kids About Race. And I'm going to let Lane Burns tell you a little bit about how that started.
I have a large parenting community that I'm involved in, and I see these questions all the time. I see parents asking, how do I keep my kids from being racists? How do I ask these questions? How do I approach my children? All of these questions that I have too. I thought, let's create a forum that's friendly for parents, that provides childcare.
The event we hosted was a great success with 77 attendees, about 30 kids in childcare, and people were saying we want more. So with your help, we want to give them more. We would like to hold 2 more versions of Talking to Kids About Race in slightly larger venues so that we can accommodate more people. And with the funding that we would receive from Forward Community Investments, we will use that to pay the stipends for the storytellers, to the MC, and Dr. Erin Winkler, who did a brief talk at the event and then did a Q&A that was super insightful. So we'd like to bring her back. We would also use the funds to pay an audio person who is a community member that not only makes sure that everyone can hear at the event, but also helps us gather audio, which we leverage on ex-Fabula Radio. It's on 89.7 WWM each weekend on Saturdays and Sundays. And if we can get audio from this event and air it, we can reach thousands more people in southeastern Wisconsin with these important stories. Funds would also go to support staff time to market and plan this event. But the great thing is that we have a lot of volunteers working on this project. So we would be matching your investment with volunteer time spent by Lane, community partner who helps us plan the event. All the volunteers that provide childcare, the venues donated, we'd be getting food donated. So with your investment, we would aim to have 120 participants at each of the 2 events. And those people in turn would be parents and educators that would go on to talk to thousands of kids about race in the greater Milwaukee region. However, ex-Fabula's racial equity work goes far beyond any single event. We aim to incorporate marginalized voices into all of our programs, and we track demographics for audience, storytellers, volunteers, board members to see how we're doing. We ask about equity and cultural humility when hiring, and I personally spend a lot of time outside of work educating myself. Last but not least, we continue to put ourselves in the community and listen and learn.